And look at those babies. Just look at how healthy those are. I'm a big advocate for growing your own. And I'm going to form about a 1/4 inch layer on the bottom. What I do is I grab some like that and I just move my fingers a little bit and they dribble in. It looks like this. Take a plain water sprayer and get the seeds wet. All their little roots are going down and all the little leaf heads are coming up. Amazing. And we'll look at it again tomorrow. Let's look at this one. Oh, look at that. Really jumped up overnight. These two are ready to go under the lights. There we go. And you can actually see the roots are growing down in there. This is the game of kind of like growing them up to a certain plumpness and vibrancy, and then you harvest them. A couple of years ago, I decided, especially in the winters around here in Montana, I needed more green and I needed more life in my diet. And I became interested in microgreens, little baby plants that are probably about a week old or something like that. And you know, they're not really bulky. They don't fill you up, but they have a lot of nutrition and they have chlorophyll in them and they're alive, basically. And this is broccoli, I think, and this is cabbage. Let me tell you a little bit about how good they are for you. Microgreens are nutrient-dense young vegetable and herb seedlings harvested within 1 to 3 weeks of germination. They offer a powerful concentration of essential nutrients, often containing from 4 to 40 times more vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants than their mature counterparts. Rich in key nutrients, microgreens are especially high in vitamin C, vitamin K, vitamin E, folate, iron, calcium, potassium, and antioxidants like polyphenols, carotenoids, and glucosinolates. We all need more of that. Supports disease prevention. The high antioxidant content may help reduce the risk of chronic diseases such as heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and type 2 diabetes. For example, broccoli microgreens, which is probably my favorite, contains sulforaphane, a compound linked to cancer prevention, while fenugreek microgreens may improve insulin sensitivity. They promote eye and brain health. Lutein in microgreens supports eye health and may reduce the risk of age-related macular degeneration. Polyphenols and antioxidants may also enhance the cognitive function and protect against neurodegenerative diseases. They aid in digestion and weight management. They're high in fiber and digestive enzymes. Microgreens support gut health and regularity. Their low calorie and high nutrient profile makes them ideal for weight management. They do a lot of other things. I'm not going to read this whole thing. But one thing that Anthony William says is that when you have live leafy plants and berries and things like that, that they have microorganisms on the outside that he calls elevated biotics. Elevated biotics. They're better than any kind of probiotics that you can buy. They're way more efficient and powerful in our guts. So I have to confess, these are the first microgreens that I've ever bought in my life. I bought some today because I'm going to try them out and everything. But the reason why is because I've just been growing them myself. Each one of these little baskets cost almost $5. And you know, even at that, it's a pretty good deal if you'd like to do that. And I'd encourage people to eat it. I roll these up in wraps and eat them like a big kind of salad in a flour tortilla. But you put them in salads, you do all kinds of things. They're very tasty. Anyway, instead of $5, check this out. Here's a whole acre of broccoli. I think this is actually kale. Microgreens. And look at those babies. Just look at how healthy those are. And it's, yeah, I don't know if you have to adjust it. You shouldn't have to, but they're just brimming. And they're just right now. Very dense. So, you see, I can just, if I need to put some on a sandwich or something like that, get a really sharp knife and you cut them. You don't pull up because you might get a little bit of the dirt stuff with it. But this is what they look like. And they're very tasty. And now these happen to have that sulforaphane stuff in them. So they're a little bit spicy, but not too much. These are perfect. These are perfectly ready to go. Here's another kind. You saw these. These are red cabbage, purple cabbage. Well, this is too. Look at those babies. And there's so much. I could probably get 3 or 4 of these containers out of one of these trays. And the cost of the materials that went into growing, for instance, this tray right now, the seeds and the growth medium that's in there, not counting the trays and stuff, are probably like 25 cents or something. It's very, very, very low. I mean, you have to have lights, of course, but once you're set up, the incremental cost of trays and trays of this stuff is very low. Plus, it's totally alive. And if you want to get the benefit of these elevated biotics, you know, you've grown it yourself. You don't have to wash them, because I don't know if these commercial ones, if they wash them just to be kind of cover themselves and make sure they don't, you know, make somebody sick. But the best version of this elevated biotics, I think, is just eat it immediately. And so anyway, I'm a big advocate for growing your own. Next, I'm going to show you how to do this. We're going to go through A to Z. Okay, let's get started. I'd like to show you the equipment and materials that I use to grow microgreens. Starting with the trays. And I use 2 different kinds of trays here. My favorite is what's called a 10-20 tray. It's 10 inches by 20 inches long. These are made by a company named Bootstrap Farmers. I got them on Amazon.com, and I think they're fantastic. They're made in a way that they'll just never wear out. You can put them in dishwashers, although I recommend cleaning them by hand. Here's another way you can go, and these are very inexpensive. You can buy a set of these, 5 of them, for like $15 on Amazon. The thing you have to know is that if you're going to go buy, is that to grow microgreens, you need the right combination of these things. You need 3 of them. So I've got one, and this one just happens to be white, and it's solid. But now this one has holes in it, okay? And there's a reason for that. And the way you do this is you put the one with the holes in it on top of a full one. You put the growing medium in there, put the seeds on, and it's all damp and everything like that. And initially, you put another one without holes on top of that. Okay? And you do that while the seeds are sprouting. So for these, you have to use one of the bottoms to do that, like that. Put the grow medium in there, and then the seeds, and then put that on the top. And I'm going to demonstrate all this so you see it, so don't freak out and think you have to memorize all this stuff. So the trays are very important, and here's another important part. This is what's called coconut coir. It's coconut husks, coconut shells, just ground up into powder, and it's very compressed. This is 10 pounds. One of these bricks like that, which you can also get on Amazon, this will probably last you most of a year, maybe a year. Once it's, what you do is you chip off some, like with a screwdriver or something like that, put it in a container, add hot water, and it it really fluffs up a lot. You don't need very much of this to get enough to grow a whole bunch of stuff. Looks kind of like that when it's done. And people use this for potting soil. Coconut Choir, Cocoa Bliss. Look for some on Amazon that have a lot of user reviews, and they mention that there isn't a lot of salt, because sometimes when they process this stuff, like in Indonesia, Philippines, places like that, they'll use ocean water, and you don't want a lot of salt in these things. So that's one piece of advice. This very brand, this Cocoa Bliss, they're good, but obviously you can shop and find something. You can get this in smaller bricks too if you want. I like these big bricks. It's just easy to use. So you wonder, what are these bricks doing here and things like that? Well, I mentioned that after you put the grow medium in here, the Cocoa Bliss, the Coconut Choir in there, and you got the seeds and everything like that, and then you cover it up, and the seeds are germinating. Well, what you do is, I put one of those on there and I put a brick on it. It's important that until the seeds have sprouted, and as many of them as possible have sprouted, and they've tried to find what's up and what's down, that you keep pressure on this so that they don't start growing sideways and growing down and things. What happens is what's supposed to go up goes up, what's supposed to go down goes down, and the roots grow down through these little holes and stuff, and then you water from the bottom. So it seems weird that you put this pressure on here, but you get much better crops if you do it that way. So I cut these just the right size so I can use one on that, or else two of them on the big trays. I've got spray bottles. I got a couple. One of them's for just water. Right after you plant the seeds in there, maybe once a day, you want to lift it up, and the seeds are just barely starting to sprout. But usually you have to mist it, because they'll absorb water as they're sprouting, and until they start to get tall enough, then you have to keep misting them and giving them just a little bit of water. I have another sprayer here, and it says H2O2. It's hydrogen peroxide, plain old hydrogen peroxide. I use that for disinfecting these after I clean them. Usually I just use them and then I put them away, and right before I am making a new crop, I'll take these out, I'll scrub them with really hot water to clean them and kind of disinfect them, and then I spray the hydrogen peroxide on it, all the surfaces of all of these that I'm going to use, and that really disinfects it. And it's important because I've read about this, or I've seen it on videos that other people give, but I've also been bitten by it a couple times when I wasn't really careful. Because this is a moist environment, it's really meant to grow things, but fungus and things can grow in there. So once I started disinfecting these things with hydrogen peroxide, just before I start growing these things, I never have ever had a problem with any bacteria or any kind of bad stuff, fungus or anything like that. So hydrogen peroxide and a water dish. So then there's seeds. I get these off of Amazon too. If you just search for microgreens seeds, these things are a really good deal. Here's one. It says Kale Trio. It's got 3 different kinds of kale, and kale microgreens are really good. They're very, very easy. They grow fast, and it's just a good thing. It's got blue curled Scotch, Premier, and red Russian kale. Great. Here's one that it says sulforaphane mix. Sulforaphane is the spicy stuff. It's got broccoli, cabbage, it's got some kale, and it's got turnip in it. What's this one? This one called Superfood Microgreen Mix. broccoli, purple, kohlrabi, radish, collard, and turnip. These are great, these mixes. They give you a real variety of things. Eastern Sun, I love this too. Mizuna, which is a kind of green. Pak choi, tender green, daikon, mishili, cabbage. Anyway, you find these. A 1 pound bag like this will last a long time. I mean, you could get like maybe several mixes like this, might last you a year. You'll see in a minute when we start planting some of these, you're just sprinkling them in. And one of these 1 pound things lasts a long time. Here's one that's kind of more unusual. It's buckwheat. They're kind of fun. They're very different. They grow up kind of tall. They have big leaves and stuff like that. You can do peas, pea greens. Those are great. I like cabbage a lot. And I buy the cabbage kind of in bulk. This is purple cabbage. It's called red acre cabbage. And I grow these in my garden also from this same seed. So this is the material. And here's one other critical piece of information. So this is a grow light. So if anybody, sometimes people say, well, can I just grow them in the window? I would never do that. I don't think there's enough light compared to what you could have. I first bought this because I wanted to start my garden plants indoors in the spring to get a head start on our Montana late spring. And these things are absolutely fantastic. It's a real grow light. I'm going to turn it on real quick and you can see it's got little different colors. There's kind of yellows and there's whites and there's reds. And that's to make the full spectrum the same as the sun gives. And it's really good for these guys. And, you know, you might want to be tempted to use like a shop light, like a fluorescent light. You know, I guarantee you the shop light, it can't come close to the kind of brightness as this. And the brightness really, really imparts, you know, a lot of life-giving light to these things. I've tried it on really low settings, on high settings, and things like that. And indoor plants, they really benefit from having a lot of light. So I bought these on Amazon as well. I think they're about 160, 180 bucks. Obviously, you don't have to buy one of these, but boy, I'll tell you what, it's really, really effective, especially if you're serious about growing microgreens or to start your plants in the spring. So this is some of the gear you have to have. I'm going to go through and show you how to do the different steps. The next step is after I've scrubbed my trays, we're going to put the coconut coir in. It's going to be wet, and then we're going to plant the seeds, and that's the next step. So I've washed 2 sets of trays, the big ones, and 1 small one that we're going to plant as a demonstration. We have to prepare the growth medium, the cocoa coir. Like I said, it comes compressed in a very, very solid brick, and because of that, you don't need very much to do a job like this. So I'm going to give you a vague idea. So this is how I get it off, just with a screwdriver. Like this right here, you'll be amazed at how much this amount rehydrates. I think this is probably going to be enough, maybe a little bit more. Yeah. So, that's how you get that off the brick. So there's just like a few slices like this. But watch what happens. This is boiling hot water. I use hot water. It kind of sterilizes things so you're not bringing anything into your situation from halfway around the world that's going to cause problems. And it takes quite a bit of water. Now you don't want it to be like a soup too much. You want to just have just enough to hydrate it. And it helps to kind of mix it around a little bit so that you don't add too much. There's some kind of little thing. It's still fluffing up. It's got a ways. There's still some solid pieces in there that haven't even accepted the water yet. I'm gonna hit those. That you can kind of see that it's starting to just fill up this whole mixing bowl, salad bowl, whatever it is. It's my grow medium bowl today. So it turns out this amount does a pretty good job. That amount of water in this kettle does a good job, and you can kind of see that it's pretty fluffy. It's not like mud. You don't want it to be like mud. And it is hot, but it's not really a problem because it's going to cool down pretty fast. So that's looking pretty good, and this is more than enough for what we're going to do right now. So I'm going to put one of these tray sets together. The way I have it, the white one goes on the bottom, and then the one with the holes goes there, and I don't need this one yet. Just the one with the holes and the bottom, and I'm going to very carefully, so I don't spill this all over the table, just put some in here like this, and I'm going to form about a 1/4 inch layer on the bottom. And this spoon, it works really quick to do that. And I try to make it smooth because when we spread the seeds, you want them to lay out evenly. You don't want them to be all clumped up in certain areas. And if you've got a lot of hills and valleys, that's kind of a problem. And for that reason, we're going to do this pretty soon. I haven't done it yet. When you spread the seeds in there, after you have the seeds in, I think sometimes people make the mistake of jiggling the tray, thinking that it'll further even out the positioning of the seeds, but it does the opposite. So I'd urge you, don't do that. Don't jiggle the tray to try to kind of even out the pattern of dispersal of these seeds. I've done it and I regretted it. I had to kind of try to fix it with my hands. It's not easy, and it wasn't a very good job what I did. So, might be a little hard to see this, but now I've got about a 1/4 inch layer on here all over, and I've got it smoothed out. There aren't any gaps, and I can put some seeds on there. What do we got here? I'll use this one called sulforaphane mix. It's got broccoli and cabbage and kale and turnip in it. And the way I do it, and some people kind of spray it like that, and I've watched them do that on video, YouTube videos, and it's not very even. It gets, I don't know, there's a lot of variation. What I do is I grab some like that, and I just move my fingers a little bit, and they dribble in, and I think that I get a better randomized kind of dispersal of seeds. And got a little bit of too much there. I'm going to show this after I have it down. You can see what it looks like. If you get too much, the plants are just, there's too much competition. They're too dense. If you don't get enough, well, you kind of surrendered some of your possible productivity. in the whole thing. So it looks like this, about that much. You can see there are some kind of places where it's a little more dense than others, but this is going to turn out really well. Right there. So I'm going to do 2 more, including one of the little green ones. After you get the seeds in like that, take a plain water sprayer and get the seeds wet. Of course, the coconut coir growth medium is already wet from the hot water that I used to rehydrate it, but to get them going really good and germinating, it's good to spray them pretty thoroughly so that they're kind of glistening and they're kind of wet. You don't want to soak it so much that they're too much, because you're going to maybe add a little bit each day. But that's pretty good right there. That's what you saw me do. And then you take the top lid, and this is a solid one, and you put that on top of that, just like that, and put these on it, and do like this. Now I would do this normally in the place where I'm going to store them. In fact, I'll just carry it away. But that's after I do that, I'm not going to even look in here until maybe a day later, midday, later in the day, tomorrow, and maybe miss them a little bit. You'll be able to see little tiny tails of sprouts in it at that point, but it's an early stage at that kind of stuff. Here's one of the smaller, kind of very economical trays. Same kind of thing. Just really carefully put this stuff in here. Give it about a 1/4 inch thick layer of growing medium, maybe a little more. It doesn't have to be really thick. These guys, these kind of seeds, these kind of plants, they're not going to be growing more than a week. So this isn't like some long-term crop and they need a lot of this medium to sort of grow. But they're very happy to sprout and grow up to the point when we're about to harvest them in this. There we go. So, I won't bore you with spreading it on these other ones, but see, after you put seeds on there and spray it, then you put that on top. You can put the wood, 1 piece of wood and then 1 brick. Okay, the seeds have been in the trays, moist and germinating for more than a day, and we're going to take our first look at it, and we're going to spritz them with water because, as they absorb water, in order to sprout, you have to replenish it. You don't want them to get dried out anytime. So, and you'll notice I put all these organites on here. I think it makes them happy. So you don't have to do that. You might not have them, but just explaining why I do that. And once again, we put these bricks and all this stuff on here because it forces the roots to grow down, and you'll absolutely get a better crop if you do that. So here we go. I have a little technique. When you first lift it up, do it kind of slow because you don't want the clumps of seeds and the growth medium to stick to this thing. And initially, you'll see that there's a lot of good seeds stuck there. And what I do is I go like this to make them get off here because I want them to grow. And see, that got most of them off. So maybe you could get a little closer, and you can see that a lot of these seeds have little white tails on them now. and see that the white tails are sticking down. Some of them were coming out at different angles, but now they're sticking down. That's because we've got the weight and the bricks on them. Okay, it makes a better crop because it sort of forces them to get their up and down correct. Okay, so I'm gonna spritz them a little bit here. And you notice I've got this kind of large sprayer. At first I was using kind of whatever I could get for sprayers, and then I found out that they make really nice ones in hardware stores or like places that have growing supplies, and they last a lot longer and they work better. So anyway, this is a superior sprayer I found, and they last longer and just do a better job. Don't have to really, soak it, but they are absorbing water, and we don't want them to get dry. So that's probably just about enough. And this, by the way, this is kale seeds. You're going to see in a minute, the next one I do, it isn't as far advanced. And that's because it's cabbage, and they're just slower. And I often stagger kale or broccoli with cabbage, and I end up eating the broccoli or the kale earlier, and then later I don't have two crops all ready at the same time. It's kind of nice if you have a slower type and then a faster type. Okay, so it's going to look a little different, and this one is purple cabbage. They don't look too much different, actually. Huh. Yeah, they will later. So I'm going to dislodge these guys like this and do my spraying. That's enough. Just keep them going and gently put that on. They're pretty tough. It's not going to hurt them to put these bricks on and stuff. Once it gets to the point where you look at this, probably the next day after this, when I can see that all the little roots have curved and they're all pointing down. I mean, the vast majority of them. We're going to do something different here, and we're going to move into a phase that is called by professional growers Blackout. And what they do, and what we'll do, is instead of putting it down that way, we're going to flip it like that and allow them to start growing up. Initially, there's still too much really early stage sprouting that we need to encourage the roots to go down. But at a certain point, after by far it's set in that direction, we want them to start growing up, and we put it on like that to allow them to grow a longer stem. And you might wonder, well, you don't want a big long stem, but we want a long enough stem to make it so it's not too hard to take a sharp knife and harvest them. So if you put this top one on like that and let them grow in darkness, it causes them to want to stretch towards light, and they'll grow about this much, and it'll grow enough stem to make it easier to harvest. Then after they've gotten up to the top, we'll put them under light, and you'll see all that. So anyway, this is these trays are very kind of multi-function for different stages. And I do have this one. I've got a different kind of seed in this one also. Let's just see how this one's doing. Now these guys look different. You get close, you can see they have a lot of little root hairs. This one has a type of, it's a mix of seeds, and the really big ones are radishes. Radishes just grow faster and bigger and everything, but it's interesting to note they look different between this versus the ones we just looked at. So I'm going to spray them, and it'll kind of hose down those little root hairs, but they don't mind. There we go. I'd say, you know, this at this stage, it usually takes about 2 to 3 days before you begin to turn it over like that. You've got all the roots going down. So probably tomorrow for sure we'll flip all these over that way. So there we go. Okay, these babies are 3 days old. This is the end of the third day since we planted them, and we're going to peek again. We sprayed them yesterday, and you're going to see a big difference. I took the weight off, and I'm going to do this again, and look at the change from over just 1 day. And all their little roots are going down, and all the little leaf heads are coming up. Amazing. That much pushed all that weight, 2 bricks up, isn't it? So it's time for what they call blackout. And what I do is I just wipe off all these little seed holes and stuff into a garbage, and really all you have to do is we're going to spray them again, because you can see if they've grown that much, they are absorbing water, and they have to have water to keep going and keep growing. Once we get up to a certain stage where the roots are sticking through the little holes, we'll be watering them from underneath, and we won't be spraying them anymore. But right now, it's time still to water them from above. And really, all you do is, I'll be putting it where I put them, and you do it like that, and it keeps the light out, but it gives the little tops, woo-woo, we can grow now. So that one was one of the more faster growing mixes. This one is, I think, the purple cabbage. Oh, look at that. You can kind of see that they're a different color. They're smaller. I was making a point yesterday that cabbage grows a little bit slower. And you can see these aren't quite as far along. But these are purple cabbage. So I'm going to wipe the top off, because they're far enough along that we can move them to blackout stage. Spray them. And cover them up. We do have this one here, and this one's a real super achiever. Look at those guys. All these little seed holes are just cast-offs. They really grew. Just has to do with the mix of what you're growing. Broccoli and kale, I think, definitely grow a little bit faster. Because this thing isn't going to block the light nearly as good as these black tops, what I do, and I didn't bring one with me, but I put one of those pieces of wood on there just because you want to try to keep it dark. That forces them to go, oh, I really want the light, and they grow some longer stems. So I don't think I sprayed this one either. So I'll be putting them back where they are incubating, and I'll put a piece of wood on that. And next time we look at them, probably tomorrow, and we'll see a lot of change. And it might be close to time at that point to put them under light, but we'll see. Okay, thanks. Okay, we're back here. This is day 4 after planting these guys, and I mentioned in the last sequence that after we put them in this blackout, hopefully the stems will be long enough so that it's convenient to harvest them. And I'll show you what it looks like. Ideally, they're at this point with this thing still on it to encourage the stems to get up to about the top of that. So let's see where they're at. Here's the first one. And I'm just going to say right now, I want the stems to get a little bit longer. And the reason why is, see, to harvest these, you have to be able to kind of gather them in clumps and cut them like that really carefully. And that they need to be longer than that. So I'm going to leave them, we're going to spritz them with water and leave them in blackout another day, and we'll look at it again tomorrow. So I'm going to make sure they don't dry out. And you can see they're pretty moist under there, but that's good. We don't want them to dry out. We want them to be so happy to be alive. That's the whole name of the game. We want these guys to be so happy to be alive. So this is another type mentioned yesterday. This is the purple cabbage. You can see that it's even shorter, and it's actually not at the same stage as that one we were just looking at. But you can see the purple tinge to it too. So this one definitely needs more time in blackout to grow more stem and just develop a little bit more. And we'll look at it again the next day, and probably then we'll be able to put it under lights. Hopefully, we'll see. And then we've got one more here. And this is our econo tray. And I think these are growing pretty good. And you can see they're stealing a little bit of light here, and you can see they're turning a little bit of green because this doesn't block it nearly as well. I still want these really to be taller before we let them have the full light, because once we put them under the strong light, they just go, oh great, it's time to grow leaves, and the stems will stay short. That's just basically what happens, and we'd like them to be taller still, a little bit taller. Stems are good to eat too. So another day in blackout, and we'll check in on it again tomorrow. That's it. So another day's gone by. We're going to check to see if these guys have grown up enough to put them in the light. This is our cabbage, and you know, they're still pretty short. I think these guys need to stay under blackout at least another day. And this is consistent with what I've seen before. Cabbage is just slower, and I kind of don't mind because it means the harvest times are staggered a little bit. So this one, let's look at this one. Oh, look at that. Really jumped up overnight. This is great. This one's fine. You know, you could just, once it starts growing up at the top, you can get a knife in there and you can get it. So, and I think this one's probably going to be the same. Yeah, it's jumping, it's pushing up against that. So these two are ready to go under the lights. So I'll show you what that looks like in our setup anyway. I'm going to grab this one, and we're going to walk into my arboretum / office, and this if you can see that where the lights are, I made this thing to kind of hold up the lights, and works pretty good. It doesn't take very much. Put those guys down there, crank it up, And I can tell you they are really happy underneath there. I'm going to grab the other one here. And there we go. And they're going to look quite a bit different next time you see them. Okay, this is 2 days after the last time we looked at these, and you can see that these 2 trays came out of Blackout. They've been under the lights for 2 days now, and you can see that they're growing a lot of green cotyledons. It's the very first little leaves that they make. They're not ready to harvest yet, but they're doing quite well. This is the cabbage, and it took 2 extra days for these stems to get long enough where I thought, okay, now I can put them under lights, and it's easier to harvest them when it gets this high. Now when it gets to this stage where we're growing them under lights, we don't spray them anymore, although you could spray them if you want to. They kind of like it, but this is how we water them. You just lift up this underneath there, and if you remember, there's holes underneath here, and you just kind of flood this, not with too much, but just get enough so that it covered everywhere in there. And you can actually see maybe in about a minute after it's had a chance to seep in if there's any dry spots, if you put enough in there or not. And you can actually kind of see also by the color, and you can touch it to see if this growth medium is getting wet. You don't want these to get dried out. If they get dried out and they wilt, you know, you can kind of get them to come back to life, but I've found that they never are quite as good. They're not as robust if you let them wilt. So if you keep them hydrated like they want to be, that's perfect. These trays, they have a bigger gap underneath there, so you have to have more water in there. And you can actually see the roots are growing down in there to try to reach that. And I kind of shake it a little bit just to make sure that some of it gets up into the growth medium too. And just to make sure that everything is staying even, I kind of rotate these every day too at the point when I water them. And going to check to make sure it's not dry at one end or something, but it all looks good. And they're growing like crazy now under the lights. So here we are 1 day later, and these 2 trays on the left are getting a lot closer to being ready to be harvested. You can see that the leaves that are on there, they're called cotyledons, and they're actually kind of a growing part of what used to be the seed. They get up to a certain level of kind of fatness, and then after that, what happens is what grows out of the middle of those is what are the true leaves, and they look a lot different. And you don't really want to wait until the true leaves come out, not very much anyway. Otherwise, the whole thing, it all gets kind of more tough and harder to chew on and stuff. The way they are now, they're very, very tender, and they're very nutritious and good. So this is the game of kind of like growing them up to a certain plumpness and vibrancy, and then you harvest them. And so this one's looking pretty good too. You can see the soil is moist but not wet. It's not like a pool inside there. And they're growing well. They look good. These have some taller ones because those are radishes and they're spicy. Now on the right here, this is the cabbage, and you can see that they're just progressing slower, and the little cotyledon leaves are just starting to create photosynthesis. And anyway, it's all looking pretty good. So I think we'll probably be able to start harvesting these either tomorrow or the next day. These, I think I'd wait for at least 3 days more of the sunlight here, the sun, before I do that. So So these guys are ready to harvest, and I'm going to harvest some and show you how I do it. It took me a while to kind of get good at this, but I also wanted to mention, you don't have to harvest it all at once if you don't want to. I do a kind of a hybrid of cutting big bunches of it and then just eating it for a meal, but then sometimes I'll cut up some more, put it in containers, and then put the rest of the thing under the lights. You don't want to do that for too many days because these end up the stems kind of start to get a little more chewy. So I'd only maybe keep this at its height like it is right now. It's very dense. I'd only keep them like that maybe about 3 days or something like that. And if you're at the end of the third day or something, and you're cutting some for a meal or something, just trim the rest of it and just put it in some containers. That's what I think, and put it in the refrigerator. You can spray it a little bit just to keep them healthy. And they seem to live. Obviously they're not totally alive, but they're pretty alive and tasty and still in good shape even a few days later after you put them in here. So it's really, I think in some ways it's better to harvest when they're at the max, put them in containers and spritz them a little bit, keep them cool, and you'll get the best product over a period of time. So you have to have a really, really sharp knife. This is very carefully sharpened by me. And the way I harvest these, and I've watched pros who basically grow these for a living, the way they do it and the way I do it is you kind of gently, you don't want to like grab it too hard, but you grab a collection of them and you get down not too low, but low enough so you can get some of the stems, and you don't want to pull up. If you pull up, even like right here at the end, right there, if you pull up because there's some resistance, you're going to pull some one of these things out of the roots and you're going to get growth medium in there, and you don't want to get that growth medium in your stuff. So you want to only pull up once it's easy, if that makes sense. So see, I'm kind of sawing and sawing, and the only thing I bring up is what comes really easy. There, no growth medium. You can see that once you kind of get into a rhythm, you can fill one of these up and away you go. You've got another day's worth of stuff. And obviously it's not a perfect science because there's some of these kind of fall down. You can grab some, but there's a lot. So that's probably getting close to being as much as they sell for $3 or $4 or $5 in the grocery store. There's that. This one is broccoli and some other sulforaphane. Broccoli, kale, I think. This one, here's the cabbage, the red cabbage or purple cabbage. They look purple when you actually grow them up to adulthood, and they're lovely. It's one of my favorites. The leaves on this, they aren't quite as big, but these are probably pretty good to go. And you'll see it, if you remember, I had to let these grow longer under Blackout to get a tall enough stem, and it's a good thing because these are really in good shape right now. So if you've ever bought any in a grocery store, that's exactly the same as what they look like. Just cost a lot less. Sharp, sharp, sharp knife. Don't pull up. Just kind of gather it gently. Yep. So, yeah, makes a little bit of a mess, but this is so good in a sandwich or in a salad, or my main ways of eating it are salads or sandwiches, or I roll it up in a wrap, put a little bit of salad dressing in with it. So this kind of concludes it, and hopefully really hope you're energized to try this. Thanks for watching.